Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Huddle. And today we are talking with Holly Klauser. And she gave me the pronunciation of her last name, which I think is pretty cool. But we are here today, and she and we really just met on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And we have admired the work of one another. And I really am so happy that we have taken the time to record. So this is not our first time talking or meeting, but we are taking the time to record this podcast. And Holly is, I would say, if there were a career counselor in our field, Holly is that person. That's what I would say. Holly has been in the field of talent recruitment and supporting people, but she started in this field as
a BT. Yeah, before there was
technician.
Before that even.
So tell us about the road you have traveled in this field and how you landed in what I would consider a really beautiful place.
Yeah, thank you. I started kind of landed in it. I was a single mom, 2 kids, both have special needs. So I put them in an integrated preschool. And at the time I was in between jobs and somebody suggested that I work as an aide, providing verbal behavior. And I thought, oh gosh, I have no idea what that is. But I'll give it a try. And so what I discovered, like most of you, is that my heart exploded. And so I thought, this is it. This is it for life. So I found my people, I found my tribe. And then that was in 2003. And so I've stayed in that, became an RBT and was doing that, found it a little hard to make ends meet with, cancellations and just with the world of being an RBT sometimes. So, I went for a training position. That was something that, in my heart, I wanted. I didn't think I was qualified enough, but they encouraged me to be a trainer and interview. And I found my second love, which is talking about ABA and talking about, individuals with autism and really making sure that I'm laying down that foundation of understanding and empathy and having that be like the first discovery for people. And then I discovered that there was a lot of people coming in and out. And I felt like I was on a hamster wheel, and quite honestly, it just got sad. So I love training, but I wanted to try to make a different impact. And so I went to recruiting. And so I entered into recruiting, and I guess I found my third love. So, what I love being able to answer questions. Honestly, I'm not a rainbows and butterfly type of a person. There's good, there's bad, there's the ugly, there's everything in between. I just want somebody to be able to make an educated decision, and for me to be able to give them an honest space to be able to talk about who they are. So that I can try to help them, because sometimes it's not the field for them. But yeah, so I guess, that's how I got here. I don't know if that was long-winded or not.
No,
but
it was really good, because it really, that trajectory really talks about something that I think we've said in private, but I always say companies and individuals have to have a plan for the behavior technician that grows up and grows out of the position. There's a unique skill set that the behavior technician has, and a unique eye level view and perspective. And how in this field are we going to use that to our advantage to grow people up? We talk about clients as in terms of consumers, but the other client is the person that works for you or works with you. Whatever phrasing people want to have today.
Love it. And grow up. We gotta help, lay that foundation, like you said, like thinking we have short-term goals and long-term goals, right? For our clients. We need to have short-term goals and long-term goals for ourselves and for our employees. I mean, when I went into recruiting, I had no recruiting experience. But I always had the top metrics. And I'll be honest with you, it's not about metrics for me. For me, I knew what my turnover rate was. And so I passed on a lot of people, but I also found the gems because I knew, like, nope, okay, I got to move on. But I will say this, I shouldn't say it never, because there are times where you get off the phone from an interview and you're like, okay, I need to breathe for a minute, because there was a lot of emotions talking and listening to somebody's journey, right? But I try to give advice on to people who want to try out the field. So I am a big believer of getting your feet wet a little bit first, going and doing camp or care.com or something like that for the RBTs or the BTs thinking of getting into the field. So I try to leave value to whoever I talk to. But to your point, I'm going to circle back, and sorry guys, sometimes my autism shines through. So I'm going to weave and circle back. To your point about growing up RBTs is, and this is really where I want to talk to the owners or to the companies or whoever's making those decisions, they're leaving anyways. So I hear, right. I hear that, I think it's like, why rob Peter to feed Paul, or vice versa, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They're leaving anyways. Help them out, help them grow, put it back into the business. The more you give, the more you're going to get back. This is at the end of the day, feel good about the fact that you're helping somebody find their love, their beautiful, career. And so, yeah, they're leaving anyways, you guys help them out. That's it. That's all I want to say.
It's interesting because when I had a therapy practice, we had, of course, behavior technicians, and we also had office people. Mm-hmm. But our best office people were the people who were behavior technicians. Yeah. And honestly, I'm going to say this, our best office people were behavior technicians who also had the awesome responsibility of scheduling their families for different things. So I always look for someone who has to schedule their personal lives, and how well do they schedule their personal lives? Because when you are a great scheduler of your personal life, you are able to prioritize things that matter the most. And then you're able to understand the behavior technician or the BCBA who says, I really want to go to my son's or my daughter's or my child's blah, blah, blah thing. And you understand that, and then you try to make a way. So if I had, for the small, or because they're all small businesses by definition, but for the smaller business person, I thought when behavior technicians need a break, that's the best place for them to be. When in terms of office management and scheduling, and then for people who really no longer want to do direct intervention, it's a better place for them to be. There's some skill uptake or uptick that you need to be able to have room for, to be able to grow them into that position. But if scheduling was the one thing that I could let go of first, I did. And I usually let it go to people who knew how to schedule their lives and listen to the stories of one another. And so then you create a culture of support, because those people understand the personal intricacies of one another, and then they're able to support each other. And that is a culture that you cannot beat. So speaking of culture, I said all of that to say, speaking of culture, what do you think the responsibility is of talent acquisition to understand the company culture to which they interview for, and then the market culture that they want to reach.
Yeah, so in terms of understanding the culture of the company, and each company does have its own culture, I think that for me, and I don't know that all business owners look at it like this, but for me, talent acquisition is also talent consulting. And so it's understanding the culture, but also knowing what a culture ad is. So you can't have all the same people in one bucket, you know, and hire only for people who fit this this type, right, of person that you want to join your company. You have to have the culture ad. So even though there's a different thought in the way that they approach something, it's a skill set that right now you don't have in your bucket. And so I think there does have to be the culture understanding where everybody is, you know, culture driven for the client, you know, like some of those soft skills, but then also making sure that there's all voices. So can I say this in a different way? My husband makes fun of me because he's like, are you Kennedy in this like example? But I always say that John F. Kennedy liked to have different voices, people who disagreed with him around him in his council, people who had like, you know, different thoughts. And so I like to do that the same way, which is what I like to build in a company is not always the same voice. So that you can just hear what's around you and then take it all in to make a decision. And no, I'm not Kennedy in this, but maybe I don't know. I'd like to not think about that. That's not.
I mean, you said quite a bit. So I agree that your huddle, if you will, your people around you, right? Right?
I like
The
it.
people around you everybody needs to identify that they are on the same team.
Yes.
And sometimes that team is pushing towards one goal, or that team is pushing towards one person to achieve, you know, whatever the team goal for that moment is.
Yes.
But in terms of counsel, you absolutely need people who will be around you, who will tell you, who will correct you, who will give you the information that you need, because it is about the growth. And it's almost like you see many people who are recruiting and they're recruiting for the position. And then they put the person in the position and it is a firestorm, because that person bringing in this skill, this talent that the company absolutely needs is not well supported for that team. That team is not ready for that person. And then it becomes, I feel like it's such a key when we think about recruitment and we think about retention. I feel like it begins and ends with the knowledge skill of the person who is doing the in talent acquisition.
I will agree to that. I think it has to do with the motive, right, of the talent acquisition person. So to your point, let's think about this. To me, the culture is that culture ad, but the one thing that has to be consistent is the values. So values is what you're hiring for, not culture, which is a little bit different. And so bringing somebody in who has the values, but bringing in when you're listening for that in talent acquisition, which is why I firmly believe having some sort of experience, whether it's personal, being a BT or whatever, to really understand what we're doing here in ABA is so that you can resist that temptation to find a body, right? And because at the end of the day, when I train my recruiters, I want them to think, would I want them in my home? Would I put them with my family? And if that was my sister, would I tell her this is a good job for her, right? And so I want to think about it from all the different ways to really give solid advice and think about that turnover. So it's not a firestorm when somebody comes. And it's also not the end all. I mean, I want this person to be able to come into the company and grow. So I'm going to also make another point, and sorry, I hope I'm not talking too fast, but the growing up or being able to help somebody, listening to where they also want to be
Mm.
and making sure like, okay, I'm hiring you for today, short term, but do I see you here long term in other ways? And then it's also talent development / HR's job along with clinical. So it's really the whole tribe or the whole huddle
Yeah.
that needs to check in and be like, hey, how you doing? How's the job going? 6 months later, still loving it? A year later. So let's
Still
talk about
loving
what
it.
it is, right? Still loving it, McLovin' it. I
But
don't
you
know.
know, people don't tell the truth.
That's why you
You
have to
know,
have the
people
right
don't tell the
person
truth when they're
asking.
asked that question. If they're asked that question,
Mm.
because you're often asked that question by someone you report to.
Yeah, that's why you have to have the right person asking. I
Yeah.
still think that talent development should not only be at the hiring stage, but they really should be doing those 30, 60, 90 check-ins, because they've already built that trust. They know that, the employee knows that the talent advisor is invested in them right from the beginning, because we've already established that. And we want to know too, are we saying what it is? Like, part of the question needs to be, hey, when I told you were going to have support, did you? Like, did you feel the support?
Mm.
When I told you that your BCBA was going to be involved, were they? When I told you that we were going to take care of you in terms of scheduling and listen to like what your skill set, all of those things, and whatever it is that your company does, asking them, did we show up for you?
Did we show up for you?
Yeah.
That showing up for people is really, it takes on a new space sometimes, even inside, not even, but inside of me. So showing up for people, some people articulate what that show up means for them.
Mm-hmm.
In the words of my 6-year-old, some people have no words for what show up means for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how does that work in terms of reading the minds of people and what observable, clinically we're taught to observe things. And I think, colloquially or in real life, we people watch. So what
Yeah.
people watching skills do we need in order to understand if the environment is showing up for people? I'm talking about people who are the only Black person on the clinical team. You're a BCBA, and that's a whole nother thing. So think about how we typecast our BCBA staff to look a certain way. And we smile in these pictures, but then I am always disappointed in pictures when I don't see a person that looks like me in that picture.
Presented.
Yeah.
Yeah, fully. And it's kind of hard because no, I get it. I think, well, okay. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I think that what we need is accountability, right? So accountability. So number one, we're going to start with the operational definition, right? Of looking at what is it that we think tells the story of a healthy employee. I would say limited cancellations, because if you're canceling, you're tired, you got whatever it is, like talk to them, like what's going on. See if you can be supportive. Cancellations, I think if you see them updating their LinkedIn or their resume, huge flag, you probably missed the cues before, right? So I think running reports, holding people accountable. So for me, for example, I'll give you an example. When you think about when somebody comes on and we hire them in, they're most likely brand new, right? So they might be making mistakes in the beginning. So who do we hold accountable and deciding what is some way that we can support the common mistakes? So identifying those mistakes, right? So I've seen people let go for timesheet fraud within the first week. It's a training issue, right? I mean, within the first week at certain magnitudes. So identifying where the support is needed, making the job aids being available for the training, and just knowing the person, right? So if they're normally like very bubbly and they're there, and then you start to see the different effect, it's just paying attention. At the end of the day, it's just paying attention. Like,
It
I
is.
mean,
It
at
really
the end of the day,
is.
it's just pay
It
attention.
really is.
No, it's pay attention, but also hold accountable. I mean, the thing that and then be space, I hope I don't alienate myself from you guys, but I will say this is my one thing to you, is that it is part of your ethical code to train. And so it is very, very uncomfortable for BTs and RBTs to say, hey, remember the supervision and training that, you know, was promised to me? Can you do that? That's awkward as all heck. They're not going to do it. And they really shouldn't have to. So getting back to like the roots of making sure that we are doing what is required, which at the very minimum, training, you know, before we can even get to like the check-ins, do the training right. That 40 hours, I mean, that is a minimum set by the board, and it's not enough. It's not enough at all. So I'm gonna get on the soapbox there.
It's not enough. There's ongoing training. And so, you know, I'm gonna navigate us. It might be an awkward navigation, like you know, if you could picture a scratch across a record player. Am I aging myself on this one?
I'm following you.
Not following me at all.
No, I am.
Yeah, okay. I'm like, am I aging myself? Oh my God.
I think I'm older than you.
Okay.
You're good.
I am 46. I am 46 and proud of it. Where, you know, I come from the age where there were good cartoons playing on television. Because the stuff they show now, I'm like, what? They changed Alvin and the Chipmunks, the voices changed? No. So over COVID, we started watching old cartoons, which has been great.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we brought them back.
Which one's
speaking
your favorite? Sorry, I gotta ask.
Speaking of things that we need to keep as we move forward in our field, and the things that have modernized, and what values or what things that we need to keep. You know, we changed. Not we changed, but there was some change in our field. And what are your thoughts on just all of the things? There's so many things happening, like so many buckets, like you could pick from. So there's the so what changes, or what do you see the trajectory of our field going in terms of its external marketing, how people perceive ABA, and what, from a consumer standpoint, from a behavior technician, from a BCBA standpoint, do you think the trust of our field went out the door again with these publicized layoffs that were publicized in like the Forbes article? There was another article. Do you think that the trust that people have inside of our field went away again?
I was gonna say again. Yeah. You know, when you fly Southwest, they charge you if your bag is over like 50 pounds. So this was a over 50-pound question. So I don't know. There's so much to unpack there. But yes, I mean, bottom line, absolutely. You know, we're in our teenage years, right? That's kind of how I see it. We're in our teenage years. We're still trying to find our identity and all of that, but we're doing it really publicly. And it's confusing, right? So it's confusing everybody. It's confusing the clients, you know, who are also reading this. It's confusing the people who are thinking about getting in the field. As a talent advisor, I see it from all ends. I get email or messages on LinkedIn, and what I'm doing abusive? Do you know if this company is going to stay around? You know, all these things. It's so uncertain. So it's unsettling, it's uncertain, and it's heartbreaking. And you know, I think that if I had the solution or the answer, I would be happy to share it. But I think that there's so many different things, you know. Well, it brings back to this conversation. There's two things. There's the one, I was speaking to someone who is I'm in a PhD program, and we were working on a project together, and
we had this discussion about, I said, the practice of ABA is still in its adolescent stage. And she's like, no, Lobos started this, and she had this very educational answer, research-based answer. And I said, no, I'm not discounting that work. I'm saying the practice, the market, all of this is really in its infancy. And so when we talk about being able to have a response to people, we are still, to your point, developing, and puberty is public. Tantrums are public. All of that stuff is public. Kids don't really wait to show out until they get to the grocery store. And so it really is about understanding that of where we are as a field, practically speaking, in our practice is one of adolescence. And so when you are still growing up, you are still forming your identity. You are still forming all of these things, but but there's always someone who knows more, who's been there, done that. And whether they are your parents, your guardians, your uncles, your, extended relatives, there's always someone who is senior. So when you think about our field, there are other fields who have been here before. There are other fields who have done this before, who have expanded and, scaled when they have increased number of demand and needed to increase people. They have scaled their organizations to be able to support. And as a speech pathologist, I would say the American Speech Language Hearing Association has done a great job of an example of what it means to scale a governing and accrediting body, of what it means to scale in terms of programs, and help to create codes and build people and have a level of training accountability, if you will, that is necessary to be able to practice and then practice, because there's two levels of practice in the field of speech and in the field of OT and in the field of physical therapy. And so I had said this to another colleague. I said, when are we going to realize that some things are not part of our tent and wheelhouse yet, and we need to get other people? So if you watch Scandal, they had Kerry Washington, who's the fixer. When are we going to get a fixer for our public relations? Because we shouldn't be doing it, because not all of us have that skill or ability. I use Twitter. Hashtag check Twitter for those snafus. But what are your thoughts on how we need to get support as we build and grow? What lessons can we take away from other places, other fields, corporate, to bring into ABA so that we are better in terms of how we recruit, retain, and build people?
So I think we just have to play nice in the sandbox, right? And treat our clients, our families as a whole. And so to your point of practicing in our wheelhouse. So this is, and then again, I try not to get on a soapbox about this, but for me, having autism, it's important for me to continually educate people that it is a neurological communication disorder that needs to have speech involved, right? And so I love that you have your SLP and your BCBA, because I think those go together a lot. I think that might be the direction, right? Is to have multiple different letters after names, the alphabet soup, or at least combine and work together. So I think that there just needs to be more collaboration. I think that and I could be wrong, but I think that looking only at data, and data is very important, but looking at and recognizing speech or even like therapy for the families, recognizing that there's a place for that, even though they're not scientifically based, they add value, right? And there's that value add. Did that make sense? I don't know if I answered your question or if that made sense.
It did make sense. It did. It did. So I will probably extend it and challenge you.
Challenge me.
I will challenge you about the sandbox.
Okay, let's hear it.
About the sandbox, because not everyone likes sand.
Oh yeah. Okay. So tell me more what that means to you.
So my daughter does not like sand. She likes sand now, but for 6 years, she did not like sand. So her playing in the sandbox to, and first of all, gaining entry, getting to the sandbox was a challenge because she didn't like sand. Once she got in the sandbox, she didn't really appreciate the people in the sandbox because she was trying to get used to sand herself.
Right.
So I can't play where I'm not comfortable.
Okay, so maybe then you're right. So that you back it up a little bit and you put it in the coursework, right?
Okay.
You need the right people saying this. So right now with everything being torn, new BCBAs don't know which way to look, right?
Yeah.
You need to share the language, right? So we talk about not speaking in ABA terminology all the time, right? But there's other terminology too. There's terminology in every kind of like sector. I'm sure SLP has some language, whatever. So if it's incorporated in your coursework, then you learn how to appreciate it, or at least understand it within the context of your own language. And I almost feel like that's necessary too for like, MBAs and OBMs or whatever, they speak certain languages, and it's all trying to do the same thing, but nobody understands each other.
They try to speak a different language.
They try so hard. And why? Like, what's the point? We're already not understanding each other. So like, I just feel like, if everybody could, at least understand every other language and see the beauty in it, right? You'd have appreciation for other cultures, and other disciplines. Sorry, I'm thinking about just, appreciating everybody for what they bring to the table. So maybe the coursework, I don't know. What do you think about that answer? Let me volley back to you.
I think the discussion is rich. I think so to take the clinical space that you brought up, and so you're in talent acquisition, you're in training, you are in operations, right? You're in all those areas because you got to have good operations to your training, to your and training to your recruitment, to make it, to give duplicity in that department and to drive what that department should look like. So what do you think about, so typically my understanding and my experience is that when there is a BCBA interviewing for a job, it's usually conducted by a BCBA. There's a clinical director, regional clinical director. Some people grow theirs inside. Other people realize that maybe they shouldn't. They should have a mix. So usually when it's like a higher level CD, BCBA clinical staff, there's usually a BCBA who is in charge of that interview.
Sure. Yeah. So this is the mistake that I've seen in some companies. You also, and again, it depends on how you view your talent department. If you view them as just like bringing people in and pushing people through, and it's a numbers game, see what sticks on the wall, good luck. But if you view them as somebody who is there to consult, to show the holes, to help, make decisions, to keep out the biases, that's really what talent should be. They should be part of the table and be at the seat with you. Now, I'm not saying eliminate.
Yeah.
What I'm saying being part of, so that they can listen, and make sure that they're helping at least identify it. And this is where I have found a balance with the companies, is that they want to leave the decision only to the BCBAs, which, my balance offer is this: I still want to be there so I can at least highlight the holes and say, you can hire this person, but understand you're going to have to fill those gaps with this, this. Or, if you hire somebody, or that maybe, what they're not hearing is the toxicity in the interview and what might be brought into the culture of the company. So at least talking about it. And again, at the end of the day, talent doesn't have that final say usually. And so it makes it a little difficult. And that's why we take good notes to figure out, if it's something we missed or you missed, just so that we can better advise, not pointing fingers, but better advise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so there's times, and I've seen them over and over again, people interview without training. And we're interviewing, and I'm not talking about the candidate, I'm talking about the company. And you have BCBAs who are clinically astute, but who are also interviewing and conducting business without the knowledge of what it means to do HR right. And ask the right questions, the legal questions, not go to their good friends network and say, go outside the reference sheet. So there's the references that people give, and then there's the truth that people go outside of that reference sheet and ask questions about people, and then they will say yes or no to a candidate, not based upon the interview or the reference sheet that has been given by the candidate, but by what the rumor mill and what has been socialized about a person. And while it's not unlawful, it is not, that's culture. That's culture. And so and I think we've made many placement mistakes for using that methodology. And we rejected many good candidates based upon that methodology. And oftentimes the people that we have left out are people who are women with children, women and people who are of a different color or hue. So people that don't fit the typecast of the role of what that current clinical, I guess the current clinical team looks like. So how damaging is that to talent? And what kind of relationship then doesn't that hurt the talent process? And
I mean,
it happens.
I do. Oh, do I know it happens? Yes. I mean, and it boggles my mind. And that's why, there does need to be the processes. The questions of one has to be the questions of another, right? Like there has to be a system, because I'm like, well, if you ask that to her and that was your, big, X, how come you didn't ask the one that you probably decided 3 months ago that you wanted? Because at the end of the day, are you just collecting information from other people? And if you know already who you want to hire, because I've seen that practice too. And that to me is something I cannot be a part of. But I will say this. So when I interview, and I've done it both ways, I prefer interviewing via phone than video. And I'll tell you why. One, I don't need to know what anybody looks like necessarily. I get that we want to see, are they professional or whatever. But the first interview, I want to listen. And I can better listen when I don't have to worry about like my facial expressions and like, and maybe that's an autism thing, but I think it's a people thing, where I can really listen to the answers. And then when I get off, I go back and I look at my sheet and I look at just the black and white answers. Did they answer it to the best of what I think where it needs to be, right? And then you train your recruiters, you train the clinical staff on what to listen for. If I start writing down an interview, I always, I think I would, I'd like to try. Those are warning signs, you know, those are not good things to say in an interview or to hear in an interview.
Why not?
Because they're telling a story. I mean, they might be good orators, you know, they can talk the talk. They know what you want to hear. And that's the other thing too, is looking at the questions. Are you leading, you know, or are you leaving it open-ended, some of these conversations, to really get the input of what somebody wants to say? I can listen when I'm interviewing and know that somebody either just listened to a podcast that talked about that, or for our supervision students, just learned about this thing, because all they're doing is reciting to me. I've heard the same thing over and over again. But I can also hear, what I like to hear for is somebody's truth, somebody's individual thoughts on that. It can be on the same topic, but I want to hear the excitement, I want to hear the person. So I like to do that without video to start with. And then, you know, I think making sure, and I've seen this too, and I think the group huddle, a huddle is needed to make a decision sometimes, but I think getting everybody's input before the huddle is so important. Otherwise, you just got groupthink. The first person that decides how they felt about that person, it will start to like go, you know, rub off on other people. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So
I know what you're saying, because it's true, especially if that person is the louder, more vocal, more domineering person. And especially if the communication repertoires of the other people on the call are, it's not that they don't have anything to say, my father would say, everybody's not strong enough to say what they need to say all the time. Yeah. And so it's not about having a disdain for them, which I have matured in, not having a disdain for them. It's a matter of recognizing not everybody is strong enough. So sometimes the domineering voice becomes the voice of the group. That may not necessarily be the opinion of the people inside of the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to work through the hard, right? Yeah, and you know, it's a little bit difficult. So I feel like with talent advisors, and my advice to companies is that is their skill set, right? Like if you're hiring the right people in talent, let them advise, let them be part of the discussion and really listen, make sure they're trained and make sure that they're, you know, that they're good. But invite them to the seat at the table. You know, that is their superpower, is being able to figure out the right advice and listen to the right thing and assess the right behaviors in an interview, all of those things. Trainable, you know, my favorite people to train are clinical, because you know what I mean? Like you want to know, like, this is what you love, is dissecting it. Is there's not enough people dissecting it at the point of talent, you know, talent. So in the beginning, you know, so I invite more behavior analysts need to get into this and to start dissecting it, and, you know, let's figure it out. I think that, you know, assessments need to be in place, you know, with talent advisors. It would be very interesting. You know, I think salary is something that, again, for fairness, and it would be doing an assessment to know where somebody's at coming in and pay them the same. You know, and you would think that would be like a duh moment. Like, aren't we doing that already? But I don't know that everybody is. So yeah, really.
You have such a, so many companies are paying like as a bulk of companies that are paying in an average range. And those ranges are similar. And then there's companies that are paying way above what a range is. And so you have a couple things happen. You have that compensation that you talked about, and you also have people who are in positions that, and their skill set is still growing up to meet the position that they are currently in.
Absolutely.
And so we can ask ourselves, how'd you get that job? But we know,
you know the answer to that.
we know the answer to that. But then when they can't leave,
yeah,
they can't leave because they're not going to have the same compensation, and their skill set is going to be met with reality of girl or child or
you're not there yet.
Yeah, you do not meet the quality. Like, what are you doing? So how then do we prepare people to get where they need to be? What we have missed something, and I go back to what I think we have missed the career counseling part, the career counseling department of our field, because we don't have one yet. So we're working on something, but we've missed that career counseling support. And it's not mentor support. I mean, it is mentor support. It can evolve into mentorship support, but you really need assessment and match and all of those things. And so that is more of guided support.
And development.
Yeah, guidance and development. And so do you think that we've missed that?
Yeah, we need to invest in our people, invest in ourselves. So I think we missed that. I think that, yes, absolutely we did. And that's something that, I love that there's cultures out there saying that they're growth minded and they're, forward thinkers. But what does that mean? And it means giving value that you don't necessarily get that turnaround right away. But what you don't want is you don't want people staying at your company that don't know how to run it or don't know how to lead or don't know how to support. And so paying those higher salaries and moving people up to not disrupt the morale will eventually lead to less morale because the support and the structure and the human part of the organization gets lost.
I love this conversation and I love what you just said and then I'll add to that list that you gave, because the other person that's dangerous is the person that is sarcastic. And everybody looks over that sarcasm like, oh, that's just, that's just John, and John or Bill or Bob, whoever, and it's usually, they're always like the most sarcastic and apathetic. And then they bring that to their meetings and they bring that, and that becomes the socialized culture. And then you bring a new person in, right? So you have found this new gem, you bring them into this, and the only way for that person to survive is to also be sarcastic.
So, okay. I'm gonna add, I like this. I used to be in improv, so let's just keep adding. Okay. And no, I agree. And I had taken a step further that not only sarcastic, but punishing. Well, they need to learn their lesson, or well, they didn't do it this way. So I want them to know it and feel it. So that means they have to do this. And what happens is you isolate the person trying to do good. So they're pushing back because they don't want to punish, they want to educate. They don't want to punish, they want to reinforce. But there's a culture of punishment. It's very hard to undo a culture of punishment. Very, very difficult because they don't see the damage that is being done. And that is for me, that is a value that I cannot overlook. I'm pretty black and white with that. Punishment for the sake of punishment, or a give and take of power, and not being able, like, being in it to be the person that is in charge, making that decision. It can't be that way. I think that is a rampant problem
It is rampant. So no matter how many swag boxes, tumblers, coffee cups, t-shirts that you, or socks that you create, or you give, no matter how much you do that, people have realized post-COVID. So it was bubbling, but not even post-COVID, because like as we live with COVID, it has been bubbling, but now it's like at the top. And people have realized that they don't have to take this.
Don't take it.
They don't, because life is enough. And so when I come to work, I need to have this type of atmosphere, and people are trying to figure out how to do it, where they can go to get support, and what's next for them. And they are hungry for these particular resources and avenues, because you're right. There's an oppressive culture sometimes that is the way things are. There's a book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And every time I think about, it's a good one. And it's about the cycle of oppression, when the oppressed becomes the oppressor. And so you find this in teams. You find this in teams. You find this in people who always say, I grew up in a church, and I feel like the best platform for learning politics of life and how to navigate people in different places of power was the church.
Interesting.
And and so if you can have a communication repertoire that could match some churches in that area, you were set for life. Because you things that people think would intimidate you, you're just like, okay. But I digressed to say that not everybody has that. And so people really need support to almost speak for them in many ways, or give them tools to be able to advocate for themselves in those spaces. I think that the departments of talent acquisition, recruiting have such a vital role in creating spaces, filling spaces for people, but the right people. And if you have, to your point, have the right people in talent departments, then you should listen to them.
Listen to them.
You should listen to them.
Please listen to them.
Please listen to them.
And it's gosh, I don't know. Can we have a part 2 here?
We could almost have a part 2. We could almost have a part 2 anytime. But before we go, tell us what because you work from home primarily.
I do.
So tell us how you keep yourself excited and energetic for your work day. What do you drink?
I'll show you.
Go ahead. Right.
In this, and apparently I needed to take a break from this one. Is 3 shots of espresso, 3 shots of espresso, and a Thai tea.
That's so funny.
But that's the function. That's how I need to. Motivation is unwavering. I will. There are moments where if I get on a kick, I will stay up for 3 days straight, just diving into the organization or reading. I don't know.
I was just about to ask you, what are you reading? What are you reading?
Well, right now, I am reading The Coaching Habit. I'm also Heather McGill, I think it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. She recommended, oh my gosh, you guys, it's heavy. So this is all about just kind of instructional breaking down of performance problems, instructional objectives. It's a whole thing. So I'm reading this.
I like that.
It is happy. So I would like to say I read for fun, but I really don't. I like to research. So
Yeah.
that is what I love. And that's what keeps me motivated, is because I don't want to see ABA fail. I want to empower people to stop feeling like confused on and if we're doing the right thing, and try to figure out how to help them see what the right thing is and stay in the right thing and reinforce the right thing, and not have to be working so hard to make an impact, whether it's the parent trying to make an impact for their child or the staff trying to make an impact for the client, all those different things. Not to, on top of that, question themselves throughout it. There's nothing worse than, I'll share this last story and then I'll be done. But my daughter, so she has spina bifida occulta, and when she was 2, she was getting sick all the time. And so I did some research and I found a surgery, and I took it to the surgeon, and the surgeon said, I'll do it for you because you're poor and you can't miss any more days of work or whatever. So I'll do it because of that, but it's not going to help your daughter. You just have to realize she's just sick. And it took all of my willpower to really decide that no, that was actually the healthiest, right decision. And it saved her kidneys. So at the end of the day, it took me to overcome somebody who is one of the best, urological surgeons, in the Midwest, to really make that decision to risk that and do the right thing. That's kind of how I feel ABA is, right? All these parents are hearing like it's abusive. They have to overcome that to just even do the right thing and get the ABA. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen and find the right company and look for the right things, but all of this is just making it that much harder to do the good work. That's all I wanted to say.
Ooh, that's a good, that is, that's a powerful story to end on. And the voice of the consumer is the focus here.
Yes.
So you did it. Yeah, you did it. Thank you so much, Holly.
You're welcome. Can we do a high five?
We need to do it.
Okay, sorry. I really like high five, so I like to end on that.